Hello everyone, welcome to the first class of your module R2 Attire. Today we'll be starting with the front pattern of the basic bodice. The tools that you require for that are a chart paper or a pattern making sheet, something like this, your measuring tape, a broader transparent tape. Instead of this, you can also use a fabric or a scotch tape because it's easier to write on such tapes. Your measurement, a pen, an 8B pencil, your fabric shears or fabric scissors, a calculator, a stapler, a French curve. I'll be explaining in detail in another video what these tools are and how they differ from each other and how they can be used in detail, and a pattern master. Alright, so let's get started with your very first front bodice pattern. Now, you have to place your chart paper or your pattern sheet exactly like this, where it's lying flat on the table. The table should be at the height of, it should end at your waist. It should not be anywhere above the waist level because this level is easier and most comfortable to work with. Now, to start off with your front bodice pattern, what you need to do is you have to lay your pattern paper or your chart paper flat. The width-wise side of your pattern sheet or the chart should be facing you. It should be parallel towards, it should be running parallel to the table. Now, we are about to start with the pattern. Here we go. Step 1. From the top left corner of your chart or your pattern making sheet, you have to go in by 2.5 inches. You have to go in by exactly 2.5 inches and mark a point like this. Now, from the same point, you have to go down by 3 inches and mark a point. So, this is me going down by 3 inches exactly and marking a point. Now, from these 2 points, you have to square down and square out with the help of a tool called Pattern Master. So, this is your Pattern Master. Now, let me introduce it a little bit. This tool, as you can see, right in the middle we have a line and across it we have a lot of parallel lines running. Now, this is your guideline and all these lines are used for drawing squared out or perpendicular lines. I will be explaining in detail how this tool is used, but for now you have to focus on the pattern and see to it how the tool is used for the front bodice pattern. For this one, what you have to do is use this particular line, the line which is which says 90 degrees. This line needs to sit right on top of the edge of your chart or your pattern making sheet, and you have to keep this particular edge of the pattern master over here so that it touches this point, and you have to go down. What you did is, with the help of your pattern master, from this point you squared down. Now similarly you have to square out. This line is supposed to be kept on the edge of your pattern making sheet, and from this point you have to square out. This gives you a squared out box like that. This then will become your guide for tracing your neckline. Now take your measurement and see to what is the across shoulder measurement. In this case, across shoulder measurement is 14.75. What you need to do is, you need to take your calculator and you need to see what is 1/2 of 14.75. So what I'm going to do now is calculate 1/2 of 14.75, which is 1/2 of your across shoulder, which in this case would be 14.75 divided by 2, 7.37. So I am going to take my measuring tape and mark a point over this line which ends at 7.37. So here the points that I've marked is 1/2 of my across shoulder measurement in inches. So if my across shoulder measurement was 14.75, this is the marking for 1/2 of across shoulder, which is 7.37. Now, just like these 2 points, I am going to square down from this point as well. This is also done with the help of the pattern master, exactly with the same process that you did before. You have to square it down and extend the line. Now, a very important step to note here is that on this particular line that you just squared down right now, from this top point you have to go down by exactly 1.75 inches. This measurement is standard for every size and every customer. You have to go down by 1.75 inches and mark a point. Now this particular point becomes your LSP. I would be marking this particular point for your reference. This is called LSP. What is LSP? LSP is your lowest shoulder point. You will get to know what is the lowest shoulder point once we are dealing with the measurements. Now the next step is to join your LSP with this particular point. So you have to mark a straight line like this, and now from this point you have to go towards LSP by exactly 0.75 inches. This is also exactly the same and standard for all kinds of measurements and all kinds of bodies. So you have to go out towards LSP by exactly 0.75 inches, and this point becomes your HSP, which is highest shoulder point. Now since you have your HSP marked, with the help of HSP and this guided box, you will draw your neckline. In order to trace the neckline, the tool that you require is a French curve. This is what a French curve looks like, and there are different ways to use it. Now the most standard and the most accurate way to use it for guiding your neckline for the front bodice is this. You have to place your French curve in such a way that it sits very comfortably with your HSP, highest shoulder point, and it sits very comfortably again on this line which you just marked in the beginning of the pattern, and mark a very smooth curve like that. There should be no edges in this particular curve. It should be as smooth as it is demonstrated in the video. This completes your neckline, and also HSP to LSP, this becomes your shoulder line. I'm going to label it for you. This particular line becomes your shoulder line. And this particular line, this becomes your neckline. Now moving ahead, what you need to do is you need to take your measurement again, refer to it, and see to what is your bicep measurement. In your bicep measurement, you have to add a value of 4 inches. If I add 4 inches in the value of 14.5, which is the measured bicep, then I get 18.5. Now, I would have added just 0.5 inches in this measurement for getting the standard armhole. If my customer, or if the one that I'm making this pattern for, had required a fitted bodice. But we are working on a pattern, or usually standard patterns are made for ready to wear garments, and for ready to wear garments you have to add a little more ease so that the garment that you're working upon is a little breathable. So instead of 0.5 inches, I will be adding 1 inch to 18.5. If I add 1 inch to 18.5, what I get is 19.5. It means 19.5 inches is my desired armhole which I need for this particular garment or this particular bodice. Now, so this is my measurement, 19.5. For knowing where I need to end or where my point for the front armhole lies, what I need to do is I need to divide this particular armhole into 2. So 19.5 divided by 2, 19.5 divided by 2 would be 9.75. I get a value of 9.75. 9.75. Now this value is very important because is very important. What you need to do is for your front armhole level, you need to subtract 0.75 inches from 9.75. You will get to know this by the end of the video why we are doing so. I will be explaining this particular point, but for now just remember that this is the standard for every particular shape and size. Now if I subtract 0.75 from 9.75, what I'm left with is 9 inches. So my front armhole level should end at 9 inches. What I'm going to do here is keep my measuring tape at this particular point and go down on this line and mark 9 inches like this. So this is where my front armhole level lies, at 9 inches. Now I need 1/2 of this point and LSP. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my measuring tape at LSP and let it come down to this point. Now I'm going to fold my measuring tape in half exactly like this and mark a point where half of the measuring tape sits. I will demonstrate it again. You have to keep your measuring tape at LSP. Let it come all the way down to the point that you just marked, which is your front armhole level. Fold your measuring tape in half up to this point and mark wherever your measuring tape sits right at the half. This particular point becomes your front chest level. Now, the next step is to square in from this point and square in and out for this point. Now, you will again use your pattern master for this. You will square in and out from your front armhole level and you will square in for your front chest level. Now I will be labeling both the lines. This particular line becomes your front chest level or line. This particular line becomes your front armhole line. Now moving forward, you need to see what your front chest measurement is. In this measurement, our front chest measurement is 13.5. I need 1/2 of this measurement. So 13.5 divided by 2 gives me 6.75. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my measuring tape from 6.5 and let it go all the way up to my front chest level and mark the point. This is the point I get. Now, for standard measurements, how much you need to go in on this line is 0.75 inches. So, from this particular point, you need to always go in by 0.75 inches if you're working on readily available sizes and not a client's size. But in this case, in such cases, what you do, since you have your recorded front chest level, you have to mark 1/2 of your front chest level on this line and then see if you go in from this point by 0.75 inches, then what is the point that you get? So I'm getting 2 points here. This point is the recorded front chest level by 2 and this point is the standard 0.75 inches in from this point on front chest level. So I cannot mark both the points. So what I'm going to do instead, if I'm working on a client's pattern, is mark right in the middle of both these points. So this becomes your actual front chest level, which is right in the middle of client's 1/2 of actual front chest measurement and the standard going in by 0.75 inches. Now, from this actual recorded point, you have to go down, straight down with the help of your measuring tape by 0.75 inches and mark a straight line like this. This part of your armhole will always be straight. This line will never be curved because this becomes your guide for curving out or for marking your front armhole. Now, in order to mark your front armhole, what you need to do is you need to take your measurement and see what is your round bust measurement. Do not refer to the chest measurement here. This is a very common mistake that students make. You need to refer to your bust measurement. This is your round bust measurement. And what we are going to do is we are going to take this round bust measurement, which in this case is 38.5. We'll divide it by 4. And in whatever value we get, which in this case is 9.6, In this case 9.6, we will add 0.5 and 0.5 and 0.25. I'll explain it again. You have to take your round bust measurement, that is 38.5 in this case, divided by 4. The value that you get, which in this case is 9.6, in this value you have to add 0.5 plus 0.5. I'll explain why I am not calling it 1 inches directly. This would be explained in the back pattern video. But for now, just remember that you have to add 0.5 twice in this recorded measurement. So in 9.6, I'm going to add 0.5 and 0.5 and 0.25. So the value that you get is 10.87. So I'm going to, from the point 10.87, I'm going to mark the same value on my front armhole level, that is on this line. So this is exactly the value that I got, which is 10.87. Now this becomes my armhole. This becomes the point where the armhole for the front ends. Now from this point, I'm going to square down with the help of my pattern master. So you have to square out like this, and from LSP to this straight line to this particular point, I will be marking my front armhole with the help of my French curve. Now in the beginning, I told you that there are different ways of using a French curve. Now the most accurate way for using your French curve for marking your front armhole is this. You have to take this inner area of your French curve as your guide and see to it on which particular area this line sits most comfortably. So I'm going to keep my French curve in such a way that this straight line sits the most comfortably onto the French curve, which in this case is exactly this position. And then I'm going to mark this particular curve starting from the LSP. So do you see how smooth this curve sits? Now, moving forward, I need to mark the bottom area of my front armhole. For doing so, I will be using the outer area of my French curve. For doing so, I will again let my French curve sit comfortably on the front armhole level and see to the position where this line sits very comfortably onto the French curve, and then curve it out like this. This is how smooth your front armhole is supposed to be. Now, this completes your front armhole. But on your front armhole, we will be marking a dart which is only visible on the pattern, which will be stitched, which will not be stitched in the garment because it's not visible in the garment itself. This dart is given so that extra fabric can be taken out in the pattern itself and there is no extra flimsiness in your garment. For doing so, what you need to do is on this particular curve, you have to see what is the most curvy area of your armhole, which in this case would be this part. Now I will be marking 2 points with the help of my measuring tape, which will be half an inch apart. One is this, one is this. Now I will be going diagonally towards my center front or towards the edge of my pattern paper in this direction and let both the points intersect. This completes my armhole dart or my hidden dart. So this is the dart which will be further permanently closed in the pattern. This will take out all the extra flimsiness in your fabric. This completes your neckline area and your armhole area. Moving ahead, you need to see to it what are your bust points, waist points and your hip points. Now in this particular pattern, we will be marking from your HSP your hip, waist and bust line. For doing so, you need to keep your measuring tape at your HSP or highest shoulder point and keep your measuring tape parallel to the edge of your pattern sheet or your chart. This has to be very straight. It cannot be like this and it cannot be like this because that will alter the measurements of the client or the standard body measurements. So, as you can see, I am keeping my measuring tape very straight so that it sits parallel to the edge of my pattern sheet. Now I will be marking my bust point, which is at 12 inches, my waist point, which is at 15.5 inches, and my hip point, which is at 21 inches. Now, these are the 3 points that you have. This is your point for the bust point. This is your point for the waist point. This is your point for the hip point. Now, by keeping your guideline on your center front or this edge of the pattern sheet, you will be squaring out line 1, line 2, line 3. That is, you will be squaring out your bust line, your waist line, and your hip line. Let me demonstrate it how it is done. So again, this line sits right on the edge of your center front or the edge of your pattern sheet, and by letting it join this point, you have to square out. So this squared out line is your bust level. Do the same for the waist point. This particular level becomes your waist level. Moving ahead, doing the same for your hip point. This particular level becomes your hip level. Now, you see we had squared out this particular line. Now, on your bust level, you have to go down by 0.5 inch and mark a dart which is 1 inch. For doing so, you need your measuring tape. You need to, on the edge of your measuring tape, you have to go down by half an inch, again by half an inch, again by half an inch. So, what you did is, on your bust level, you went down on this squared out line by 0.5 inches, again by 0.5 inches, and once again by 0.5 inches. Now, usually when it comes to clients, we do not record or we do not take the bust span measurements because a lot of clients are uncomfortable with these kinds of measurements. So we will be using the standard bust span measurement in accordance with in what size category does this particular client's measurement fall. For this particular client, the bust span measurement is 9.5 inch. So what I will do is, I will record what is 1/2 of 9.5 and divided by 2, which is 4.75. So I will be marking 4.75 on my bust level and encircle this point. This particular point is your apex point. Then I will go 1 inch towards my side seam or towards my armhole from apex point and mark a point. So I have to go 1 inch out on this point and mark another point and then encircle it again. Now this is your apex point, but this particular point is not your apex point. We shifted 1 inch. We moved from this point to this point by 1 inch so that this point becomes not the apex but the dart point. This point is where your darts are going to meet. The next step is to join this particular shifted point, which is your dart point, to these 3 points that you marked on the squared out line. This is how it's supposed to be. The lines have to be very straight. Now, these are the 3 lines that you marked, and this is the point where the lines end. This particular dart will be visible in the garment, and this is called your waist dart. In this dart, this is your upper dart leg, this is your middle dart line, this is your lower dart leg. Just remember these terms. There is no need to label these in the pattern, but just remember that in this particular dart, This particular line becomes your upper dart leg, this is your middle dart leg, this is your lower dart leg. Moving ahead, you need to see to it what are your round waist measurements. Your round waist measurement in this case is 35.25. Exactly like the bust measurement, I would require 1/4 of this measurement. So I will divide 35.25, which is my round waist measurement, by 4. So 35.25 divided by 4 is 8.81. I will add only 0.5 inches of ease into this measurement and get my value. So 9.3 is what I get. I will mark it on the waistline. 9.3 is... So how do you get this point? You get this point by dividing your round waist measurement by 4 and then adding an ease of 0.5 inches. In this case, my round waist measurement was 35.25. I divided by 4 and I add up ease of 0.5 inches to it, which gives me a value of 9.3. This is exactly 9.3 which I have marked. Now, the same step is to be followed for the hip level without the ease. It means I need to see to my hip measurement, my round hip measurement, which in this case is 42.5. I will divide 42.5 by 4 and this is my desired value. On the hip line or hip level, you are not supposed to add any ease. So the value that I get here is 10.6. I will just be marking 10.6 on the hip level, like this. Now your next step is to join these points on your waist and your hip level with a straight line with the help of your pattern master. A lot of people use a hip curve for this part, but that is not the right way to do it, because that kind of gives your fabric an extra edge, and in case of flimsy fabrics it can look very shabby. That is not what we need. So we'll be doing this very cleanly with the help of a pattern master. Always remember to use the right tools for the right areas of your pattern. If you change the tools, then your pattern would always have some mistake. Moving forward, we'll be cutting off the pattern. In order to do so, I am going to take my pattern master again and keep it over the side seam. This becomes my side seam and I will just cut off the extra sheet. Now, I will also cut off all the area or all the sheet which goes beyond my hip level, because this is not the desired part. So I'll be cutting it off with the help of the pattern master again. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 0.5 inch away from my armhole, my front armhole, and just roughly shade a line which becomes my guide for cutting off the extra part of the front pattern. So since this is the line, what you just did is, because right now is not the time to cut off your front armhole, so you're just creating a guide in order to cut off the extra part which is not required as of now. We will be cutting off the front armhole properly, but it's only done after you close this particular dart. Right now you cannot close this dart because you require your front pattern for the back pattern measurement. So right now you cannot close this dart. That's why it is impossible to cut it off along with your front armhole. So we are not really cutting it from the front armhole. We are just going out by almost 0.5 inches. This is roughly 0.5 inch. So that we just get a guideline in order to where to cut. So this I've marked a shaded guideline and I'll just cut along. So this is how right now I'm about to cut the extra part which goes beyond my armhole, and then I'll be cutting off my shoulder line and my neckline as demonstrated. So this is your shoulder line. You have to cut along the shoulder line this way. Do it very smoothly and make sure your hands are good with the scissors so that there are no abrupt ends on the pattern sheet. It has to be really smooth, especially on the curved areas like your neckline. Now again, a very important step. You have to focus on the waist start. You have to crease out the lower leg of your waist start with the help of a pen. So here you are just creasing out the lower dart of your waist start and also creasing out the middle line or the middle dart of your waist start. Now, this is your pattern. What you need to do is you need to crease out your lower dart leg like this from the right side of your pattern, and then do the same for the middle dart leg over the wrong side of your pattern so that you get a curve on an edge like this. See, this is done in order to close the waist start temporarily like this. In order to close the waist start, you need to take your lower dart leg and make it sit on top of the upper dart leg like this. See, the entire dart is invisible right now because I'm keeping the lower dart leg over the upper dart leg. Right now, with the help of your stapler, you will just temporarily close the dart. Your staple has to be right on the edge. Don't go beyond this point because then it would be difficult for you to cut off the rest of the pattern. Now, since this is secure and closed, what you need to do is join this point on the waist with this point on the front armhole line with the help of your pattern master. This is the way to do it. Please see to it how it is being demonstrated. These are the points that you can join. Now, this area from this entire area and this entire area is the extra part of the pattern which you do not require. So we'll cut it off while the dart is closed. Do not open the dart before cutting the pattern. You just have to cut along these lines. These lines are your side seams. See, this is the extra part of the pattern which we'll be throwing away. Your front dart is now complete. Right now we don't have a back pattern. We'll be working on it after this. But right now, after completing, this is what your front pattern should look like. I am left with a few labels. Just focus on these. This particular line is your center front. So you just write CF, which stands for center front. And I'm drawing a sign right under it which goes like this. This sign is the sign of on fold. That is, the garment that you will be working with or the fabric that you will be working with should be folded and should not be cut right in the middle. This is the sign which denotes the same. Now this completes your front pattern. Thank you so much. This is your class 1 for the module Art to Attire. Thank you.